The B-17 Flying Fortress was built to be indestructible. 13 machine guns, armor plating around crew positions, self-sealing fuel tanks. Boeing advertised it could fight its way in and fight its way out without fighter escort. Cost $238,329 per aircraft. And by war's end, 4,735 B-17s had been shot down over Europe, taking 46,500 American airmen with them. That's more Americans than died in the entire Korean War. The fortress that was supposed to protect its crew became a 10-man aluminum coffin. Let me show you the mathematics of how America's most famous bomber killed more of its own crews than it saved through its supposed invincibility. Here's the brutal mathematics. The 8th Air Force lost 26,000 aircrew killed in action. Another 28,000 became prisoners of war. That's 54,000 casualties from just one Air Force. The B-17 had a 10-man crew. Average loss rate per mission, 3.7%. Compound that over a 25-mission tour, and the mathematics become horrifying. Only 31% of B-17 crews completed their tour. That's a 69% casualty rate, higher than the death rate of junior officers in World War I trenches. A B-17 crewman was statistically more likely to die than a Marine storming Pacific beaches. The fortress didn't protect anyone. It concentrated 10 men into a slow-moving target that German fighters and flak could spot from 20 miles away. But here's what nobody talks about: the mechanical failure mathematics. For every B-17 shot down by German fighters, 0.4 crashed from mechanical failure. Engine fires, hydraulic failures, electrical malfunctions at 25,000 feet. The temperature at bombing altitude was minus 45 degrees Fahrenheit. Frostbite casualties exceeded combat wounds 2-to-1 in winter missions. The B-17's oxygen system failed on 12% of missions above 20,000 feet. Hypoxia killed 340 aircrew who never saw a German fighter. The heated flight suits shorted out regularly, electrocuting 89 airmen. The mathematics are devastating. The B-17's own systems killed 8% of the crews lost before counting enemy action. Now let's talk about the survival statistics. Boeing claimed the B-17 could survive on 2 engines. True. What they didn't advertise? A B-17 on 2 engines flew at a 130 MHz. Stall speed was 90 feet. That's a 35 mm margin between flying and falling. The German FW-190 fighter flew at 426 mph. Closing time on a damaged B-17, 90 seconds. The survival time for a B-17 separated from formation, 4 minutes average. But here's the darkest statistic. When a B-17 was going down, crew bailout survival rate was 31%. The bomber's narrow fuselage, the centrifugal forces of spinning aircraft, the placement of escape hatches, all conspired against escape. The ball turret gunner's survival rate when bailing out, 12%. The fortress became a death trap, even in its death throes. The formation mathematics tell another story. B-17s flew in combat boxes, 54 aircraft in tight formation for mutual protection. Sounds effective. The reality: one German 88mm flak shell exploding in formation could damage 4 to 6 aircraft with fragments. The tighter the formation, the higher the casualties. At Schweinfurt, 60 B-17s were shot down in one day. 600 men. The Germans lost 27 fighters. That's 22 Americans killed for every German. The mathematics of mutual protection became mutual destruction. Formation flying increased mid-air collisions. 189 B-17s were lost to collisions with friendly aircraft. That's 1,390 men killed by their own formation discipline. Let's compare effectiveness versus cost. A B-17 carried 6,000 pounds of bombs. It required 10 crew, 2,780 gallons of fuel, and 11,000 rounds of ammunition per mission. Total mission cost, $42,000. Accuracy. 20% of bombs fell within 1,000 feet of target. Actual damage inflicted per mission. Negligible until late 1944. Meanwhile, a British Mosquito bomber, made of plywood, crew of 2, no defensive armament, carried 4,000 pounds of bombs. Mission cost, $8,000. Loss rate, 0.5% versus the B-17's 3.7%. The mathematics scream the truth. The Mosquito was 5 times more cost-effective, 7 times safer, and required 80% fewer crew. The fortress strategy was mathematically inferior to speed and altitude. But perhaps the most damning statistic concerns crew training. Training a B-17 crew took 32 weeks. Pilot training, 200 flight hours. Bombardier training, 18 weeks. Total training cost per crew, $125,000. By 1944, replacement crews were arriving with pilots having only 110 flight hours. Gunners with 10 hours of aerial gunnery practice. The mathematics were murderous. Insufficiently trained crews had an 81% casualty rate on their first 5 missions. The fortress required expertise that America couldn't produce fast enough. Crews were literally dying faster than they could be properly trained. The B-17 became a mechanism for converting America's youth into casualty statistics. The final, darkest truth comes from the survivors. Pilot William Lawley testified, "They called it a flying fortress. We called it the flying coffin. Every mission, we'd lose ships. Every mission, empty bunks. The math was simple. We were all going to die. It was just a question of which mission." Statistical analysis proved him right. If the war had continued and crews flew a second 25-mission tour, projected survival rate, 9%. The B-17 program cost $4.8 billion. It delivered 640,000 tons of bombs. Cost per ton, $7,500. British Mosquitoes delivered bombs at $1,100 per ton. The Lancaster delivered at $2,100 per ton. The math is undeniable. America built 12,131 B-17s, lost 4,335 in combat. Each lost B-17 meant 10 crew, dead, wounded, or captured. The fortress that couldn't be stopped was stopped 37% of the time. The defensive armament that would protect them shot down 2,900 German fighters, but attracted 23,000 fighter attacks that wouldn't have occurred against faster, unarmed bombers. The final irony? The B-17's greatest contribution wasn't bombing accuracy or defensive firepower. It was forcing Germany to defend everywhere, exhausting the Luftwaffe through attrition. America's flying fortress strategy worked not because B-17s were fortresses, but because America could afford to lose 46,500 airmen, and Germany couldn't afford to lose 2,900 fighter pilots. The mathematics of victory were written in American blood, 10 men at a time, in aluminum coffins that were supposed to be impregnable fortresses.